Good evening. Welcome in RNQ IGNOU classes. Philosophy of Religion, block number 2. Contains objectives, introductions, univocal and equivocal, analytical, logical, positivist, and retentions, verification principles, and falsification principles. Responses to verification and falsification principles. Let us start. Key words, further reading and reference. 2.0 Objectives. The main objective of this chapter is to have an understanding of the need and importance of philosophical reflections with respect to the religious language. This chapter carries out the historical and philosophical significance of the introspections thinkers carried out with respect to religious language as one or the other religion is prevalent in entire humanity as such at all times. We will be carrying out an overall study on the different thinkers viewpoints with respect of our religious language in both the Indian and Western tradition. Thus, this chapter attempts to make the readers equipped with the need and necessity of the philosophical reflections of religious language. At the end of this chapter, you may be in a position to have a basic understanding of the need of philosophical reflections of religious language, to have acquainted with different philosophers' understanding on the issues of religious language, to have a conceptual clarity of the different functions of religious language, to have an overall grasp of the issue of religious language. 2.1 Introduction. Why one is to study the nature of religious language, what is special about religious language, or is religious language and ordinary language the same? Essentially, the discussions in religious language pertains to one basic issue as to what we can say about God. In the broadest sense, the religious language discussions are based on what is the nature and functions of the language that is employed in religious literature. The discussion is carried out not only in Western tradition that is employed in religious literature. The discussion is carried out not only in Western traditions but also in Indian and in other traditions as well. I will try to focus on Indian and Western traditions with respect to their concerns on the nature of religious language. In order to make this issue more concrete, let us try to take few examples and start the analysis. Find below some of the passages from Vedas and Bible. In the prayer to the cosmic being Purusha, the prayer starts with the following descriptions. 1,000 heads of the universal man Purusha is also 1,000 eyes and 1,000 feet. He spreads over the earth on all sides and beyond it as far as 10 fingers can count. Purusha Sukta Rigveda. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous and his The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry. The face of the Lord is against those who do evil, oh, to cut off the memory of them from the earth. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. A righteous man may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from them all. He protects all the bones, not one of them will be broken. Jesus said to her, research, I am the resurrection, I am the resurrections and the life. He he who believes in me will live, even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? What is the nature of this type of utterances? How do we make sense of these descriptions about the divinity? Or how are we to understand those religious utterances that talk about God? For example, how does God have 1,000 heads and 1,000 eyes and 1,000 feet? Similarly, what type of description it is? When we talk of God's eyes and ears, what does it mean to say that those who believe in God will live forever? Does it make sense? If so, how we should make sense if it in the context of religious language discussion? For those types of descriptions of God, which apparently do not have any such problem in understanding the meaning as well, that who we need it difficult to see how certain descriptions can be ascribed to God. Suppose when we say that God is kind, good, merciful, loving, etc., do we mean if the same way as we use the terms for our ordinary human experiences, like saying that person X is kind and loving or person Y is good? That means the attributes like kind, love, caring, good, etc. carry the same meaning when we apply in the context of human and divinity. If they carry the same meaning, then how do we differentiate godly attributes with humans if they are different? Then how do we understand the meanings of kind and good with respect to God? The reason for such type of problem is that God is considered to be one supreme reality without differences. If God is infinite and transcended and and transcendent and transcendent and transcendent, if God is infinite and transcendent, then how that infinite, then timeless and transcendent supreme power be predicted with qualities like kind, good, etc., which we ascribe to normal human beings. More so, if they are attributes, they are the essential or accidental attributes of God. If we apply the attribute of kind to God, then does it mean the same like we say that X is kind? Moreover, there is a possibility that X may not be kind as well. But can we think of God not being kind? This implies that the attributes we give to human beings may be an accidental one. Without the attribute, also they can be. Whereas the attributes we give to God can't be accidental. Without the attribute, it can't be. It becomes an essential and inherent attribute of the God. These are some of the issues about which thinkers were concerned when they reflect upon the nature of religious language. In this context, when we use the language of describe God, when we predicate God, how are we to thousand those utterances? 2.2 Univocal and equivocal analogical thinkers, particularly religious philosophers, differed on the way to understand the language is used in religion in order to address the above mentioned issues. Traditionally, the answers to the process of understanding the religious language were done in three different modes. Univocal language. This position states that one should have the same meaning in whichever context that word is employed. The words that are employed in the language carry the same meaning throughout irrespective of the context or situation in which it is used. For example, suppose I say white board, white chalk, white sari, etc. In all these cases, the white refers to the same thing. The color white in the medieval thought John Duns Scotus proposed this particular view with respect to the religious language. In this context of religious language, this position argues that terms, when they are used either with reference to God or with reference to human beings, must mean the same. If it doesn't with the same univocal meaning, it will be difficult to understand what it means in the context of God. This approach would argue that God is good in the same sense in which it is used in the human context. Suppose the word kind is used in a different senses as compared to it being used in a human context. Then how could we ever understand what does it mean to say kind in context of God? But the basic problem of how the same predicate be attributed with the same meaning to God as well as human beings is a major problem for the univocalists to address. Equivocal language. This position states the words that are employed in the language carry different meanings depending upon the context and the situation in which it is being used. There can be two senses in which a word may mean differently in different contexts. One is called as homonym, where the same word actually refers to two or more things, which causes confusion in understanding its meaning. For example, the word bat is used to refer to cricket bat as well as to flying no, mammal. Similarly, the word light refers to objects not so heavy and the same time also refers to one physical property, light. Will the equivocal nature with respect to such type of words can be sorted out by finding which meaning that word corresponds to. By understanding words can be sorted out by finding which meaning the word corresponds to by understanding the context. The equivocal nature with respect to religious language takes the position that terms do mean differently. For example, the word bat is used to refer to cricket bat as well as to a flying mammal. Similarly, the word light refers to object not so heavy and at the same time also refers to one physical property, light. Will the equivocal nature with respect to such type of words can be sorted out by finding which meaning that word corresponds to by understanding the context. The equivocal nature with respect to religious language takes the positions that terms do mean differently with respect to God as against human context. As mentioned earlier, when we use the word kind, it can't have the same meaning with respect to God and the human being. So the meaning has to be different. If the meaning are different, then how can one make sense of the meaning when he makes a positive assertion about God that God is kind? According to equivocalists, definitely it can't be the same sense as univocalists claim that there has to be only one sense of the word with respect to kind in both the human and the divine context. The problem for equivocalists is that they can't admit of single unique sense of the words employed in religious language like the univocalists do, and at the same time they have the tackle the problem of understanding the meaning of the word. If they have two different sense altogether with respect to divine and human context, and because there is a problem in making sense with respect to different senses of the word, one can think of the corollary of univocal equivocal positions that will lead to describe God in the negative way. The position speaks of a negative way is in understanding God. That is, we can be more certain of what God is not, rather than be certain of what God is. This element of thought was not quite prevalent in the West as in the case of Indian philosophy. In the Indian context, the absolute is conceptualized as that which is beyond any definitions. Sankaracharya mentions in the commentaries of Vardhanayak Upanishad that words denote things through one or the other of the following name: form, action, distinction, genius, and equality. But in Brahman, absolute reality, there is none of these differences, and hence it can't be described. Whatever descriptions we have of the Supreme Being, it can't be the true description. It is more prudent to describe in a negative way than the positive way. The path of describing Brahman in the negative as Neti Northeast is a well established method of describing the Supreme Being in Indian tradition. Rabbi Moses ben Maimonides 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 is one of the most famous proponents is of this doctrine in the Western medieval thought. Analogical language. This position tries to maintain a midway between the univocal and the negative approach of describing the reality. In the medieval period, St. Thomas Aquinas was using this principle to explain our understandings with respect to predicates of God. Basically, analogy is used in language to show the similarity or the likeness between two entities or descriptions. Thomas Aquinas used this principle to show the likeness between God and the humans. Aquinas subscribed to the view that God is not a being like any other being. Hence, the univocal functions of language employed in religion, according to him, may not work. But Aquinas, at the same time, doesn't want to take a purely negative way to understanding godly attributes. He, in a sense, strike a balance between the univocal and equivocal way of understanding of the religious statements, which translates into an analogical way. In the Indian context, too, an attempt was made to understand the religious language through a metaphorical or secondary meaning, will the univocal meaning, which in Indian context is called as Vashiratha, literal meaning. is not sufficient enough for the descriptions in relation to divinity on the equivocal way, resulting in the negative descriptions of reality. Some attempts were made to give a positive descriptions without getting into the problem of univocal equivocal way. The Indian grammarians came up with the concept of secondary meaning, which was adopted by some other Indian philosophical schools as well. These secondary meanings are called metaphorical meanings or laksharat meanings or laksharth, which called metaphorical meanings or laksharth. When the words in the sentences refer to their literal meaning, but such literal meaning does not appear to make sense, and hence, when one looks for the secondary meaning, then it is called as laksharth. Classic example is the Hamlet in looks for the secondary meaning. Then it is called as laksharth. Classic example is Hamlet in the river Ganges. In this example, as there is no possibility of a Hamlet being in the Ganges, we have to look for secondary meaning, which may suggest that the Hamlet is very close to the bank. Have to look for secondary meaning, which may suggest that the Hamlet is very close to the bank of the river Ganges. Even in our daily utterances, also, we use such types of expression when we say Sachin Tendulkar is god of cricket. What we mean is not a literal meaning of the words in the sentences. We may mean Sachin Tendulkar as being as close to perfect in playing cricket. This theory was quite important amongst all philosophical schools that tried to describe the nature of ultimate reality, which is in a sense beyond expression. Metaphorical meanings, which are based on the literal meanings, are helpful in extending the range of expression without making the idea too vague for objective communication. Thus, there is a systematic and serious attempt to understand the religious language through the secondary meaning, thereby making the statements about God as meaningful. Talking about Aquinas, he explains analogy in two different ways. One is the analogy of attribution, and the other is the analogy of proportionality. 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 And the other is the analogy of proportionality. And other is the analogy of proportionality. Proportionality. Aquinas uses the analogy of attributions to explain the attributes of God. Suppose we use the example, he is healthy, and another sentence, medicine is healthy. The way we used to say a person being healthy is not the same way we used to say medicine being healthy. Will we use the word healthy with respect to person in a literal sense? We use the word healthy with respect to the medicine in a casual sense in the similar fashion. When we say that X is kind and God is kind, we use them analogically. The analogical relations here means that as God is the cause of everything in the world, every predicate can be virtually Every predicate can be virtually attributed to him. So, when we talk of attributes like kind, love, etc., in human context, the same can be meaningfully applied in the context of divine, as well as he being the cause of all those predicates like love, kind, care, etc. In the analogy of proportionality, it talks of a relative relationship between the god and its creatures. Suppose we say that a man and a woman we say that a man and the woman are faithful to each other, and we also say that a dog is faithful. We for sure we for sure know the that the we for sure know that the way we mean that man and woman are faithful to each other is definitely not the same way in which we say that dog is faithful, but at the same time there is a similarity existing between those elements of faithfulness between the man and the woman, and between the dog and the master, that makes us to understand analogically the idea of faithfulness that is exhibited in the dog as well. Just as the dog participates in the idea of faithfulness practically to its extent possible in proportion to human. Similarly, the humans participate proportionally in the divine attributes in proportion to God. John Hick 1992 gives this example to illustrate the idea of proportionality. 2.4 Logical positives 2.4 Logical positivists and Wittgenstein. Will the prominent discourse on religious language in the medieval period was with respect to the issue of how to understand the meaningfulness of religious utterances. There was not much debate to consider whether the religious utterances are really meaningful. So most of the time in the medieval period there was not much issue with the questions of cognitive content of religious language. The discussion was only to find out cognize the content of the religious language. The former issue, if religious language was meaningful at all, was taken more seriously in the 19th century, particularly talking the cue from David Hume's 1776 folk. David Hume, belonging to the empiricist tradition, empiricist traditions of philosophy, say regarding religion and divinity in his work and essay concerning human concerning human understanding. Thus, if we take in our hand any volume of divinity or school metaphysics, for instance, let us ask, does it contain any abstract reasoning concerning quantity or number? Nor does it contain any experimental reasoning concerning matter of fact and existence. No, commit it then to the flames, for it can contain nothing but sophistry and illusion. This outright rejection of religious and metaphysical works by Hume as sophistry and illusion, and which doesn't have any significant value, cognitive value, was carried further by the logical positivists. The logical positivists are also called as Vienna Circle, were a group of thinkers, philosophers who were primarily concerned with the truthfulness of any statement. They embarked on a project of coming out with a criteria of verification. They were bothered about finding the principle by which one can say that a statement X is meaningful or not. Their focus is on finding the principle which makes a statement to be meaningful and thereby sensical, and those statements which are not meaningful are deemed not sensical, not nonsensical, and they are set aside as they will not have any cognitive value. That is, knowing those nonsensical statements will not have any improvement in our gaining of knowledge. The group was started by the philosopher by name Mortis Selig, 1882 from 1936, and some of the important thinkers of that group were Rudolf Carnap, Friedrich Wiseman, Otto Neuwirth, and others. The significance of the logical positivists with respect to our discussions is that pursuit in their pursuit of showing the meaningful statements, they They relegated they related any talk about God and godly attributes as utterly meaningless for them. The religious language in nonsensical in nature, while the equivocalists were rejecting the language of descriptions with respect to God in order to maintain his purity. The same can't be said for logical positivists. They rejected the entire episode of religious attentions as nonsensical and meaningless, maybe without any serious commitment to the God supreme and transcendent nature. The group influenced thinkers like A.J. Ayer, who came out with a verifying principle to employ it in religious language to show that they are meaningless statements. Will we talk about logical positivists? We need to talk about a philosopher, Lord Wittgenstein, 1889 to 1951, who influenced the logical positivist school to a great extent, but who by himself was committed to their ideology. Wittgenstein's work Tractors Logico-Philosophiae, shortly Tractors, mention clearly about the function and the limits of the language. According to him, the function of the language is to picture the reality, and the sense of the language lies in its ability to mirror the world of experience. Any language which does not picture the reality is treated as nonsense, and in this way, the religious language and even the metaphysical language were deemed nonsensical, which mention Wittgenstein in his practice says the limits of my language mean the limits of my body. In the same line, he says, where one can't speak, thereof one must be silent. With this clear demonstration of the limits of language, Wittgenstein categorized the language of religion, morals, etc. to the realm of nonsensical and meaningless. This phase of Wittgenstein can be marked as the early Wittgenstein, with the logical positivists who thought that nonsensical statements do not have any significant purpose in our life, and hence statements about God do not have any specific meaning and hence useless. But Wittgenstein himself was maintaining that this is meaningless and nonsensical is what matters most. This difference in positions with respect to the significance positivism, there are two types of sentencing which have meaning. One is the analytic proposition, and the other is the scientific proposition. And analytic propositions are those meaningful propositions which derive their meaning by the virtue of their definitions, broadly mathematical and logical statements do come under this category. Example 3 plus 3 is equal to 6. Scientific propositions are those meaningful propositions which derive their meaning on the basis of our sense experience. They are meaningful because we can able to confirm the sentence meaning on the basis of the possibility of our sense experience. Example: this grass is green. There is a railway track by the side of my house, etc. Since religious statements do not fit in any of these two categories, there are there are relegated as meaningless. 2.5 Verification principles and falsification principles. Two principles made a strong case against the meaningful nature of religious language. One is the verification principle of AJIR and the other is the falsification principle of Anthony Flew. AJIR 1910 to 1989 was a British philosopher who came out with the principle of verification theory. A statement which can't be conclusively verified can't be verified at all. It is simply devoid of any meaning if we adopt the two categories, analytic and scientific propositions, along to be meaningful. This was, according to IRA, the two possibilities of any sentence to be meaningful. Then what can be the nature of the descriptions of God? Can statements about God are analytical or can it be scientific? Our opinions that seems metaphysical and religious statements do not correspond to either analytical or scientific. There are meaningless. There are nonsensical and any assumptions related to them do not carry any meaning and hence they are not to be described as Isaiah says. The term God is a metaphysical term, and if God is a metaphysical term, then it can't even be probably that God exists. For to say that God exists is to make a metaphysical event which can be either true or false, only by the same criterion and by the same criterion and by the same criterion, criterion no sentences which purports to describe the nature of a transcendent God can possess any literal significance. Thus, I does not only reject God's existence and any intentions related to God, but rather he rejected any possibility to making religious intentions meaningful as those intentions do not come under the principles of verification. This has put the religious language as those set of meaningless sentences which are in the base of language but do not have any future necessary to be language. Anthony Flew, 1923 to 2010, another British philosopher, comes out with the idea of falsification in the article Theology and Falsification. Flew comes up with the idea that religious language are meaningless as they can be Then immediately we question that if God loves all humans, then why there should be so much suffering? If the answer is that the God loves all human beings is false, then few would accept that it is a meaningful language and therefore the religious language is meaningful, but most of the times the religious believers will not accept that God loves all humans as false. Though there is lots of suffering, on the other hand, they may try to say that the way God loves us is different from the way we understand love. This, in a sense, either suggests that the words are equivocal, used to different meanings, or more so suggests that there is no way to falsify the statement, hence, according to few meaningless. The non-cognitive nature of religious language is because of the reason that it can't substantiate substantiate its positions with respect to verifications and falsification criteria. Is there any other way by which we can prove that religious statements are cognitive, or is proving that religious language as cognitive is the only way to make them as meaningful? 2.6. Verifications and falsifications criteria. Paul Tillis (1886 to 1965) understand the meaning the religious language with a difference he made between signs and symbols. Let us take the case of a bottle written on top that it contains sugar. This is a sign for Thilis because it merely signifies what is contained in the bottle. The meaning of the sign is derived from what is contained in the bottle, whereas a symbol like or cross do not only signify the divinity, but also participates in it. Put it in this way, the symbol or cross is as much sacred is as much sacred is as much sacred is as much sacred as the divinity itself. Like our national flag has as much prestige as the nation itself. Our national flag symbolizes the nation. It participates in the prestige of the nation. Paul Tillich, through these and similar examples, was trying to show that religious language does not operate like a sign which merely signifies like other ordinary language. Religious language participates in symbolizing the divinity. This suggests that the meaningfulness of the religious language has to be looked not only from the perspective of its signification, rather it should also be looked from its symbolizing nature. This means the religious language meaningfulness should not be based upon its verifiability, verifiability criteria alone, but its meaningfulness depends upon the symbolizing nature of the language itself. That is what it means to the believers. Why they use the religious language? Remember, Ludwig Wittgenstein, who made a significant contributions of logical positivism, thought the same philosopher in his latter phase had come up with another work, Philosophical Investigations, which takes a different turn with respect to the nature of language and functions. Will Wittgenstein in earlier stage mentioned that language has sole functions to perform, that of picturing the reality, and those language utterances which can't perform such functions is relegated as meaningless and nonsensical, whereas in the latter stage, Wittgenstein denounced that role for language and came up with the notion that language have multiple functions to perform. To understand the meaning of an utterance in the language is to see how it is being employed in the given context. He calls that aspect of language as language game. The concept of language game has played a significant role in Wittgenstein or later philosophy. He arrived at this conception with the help of certain similarities between the various uses of language and the rules of various games. Just as there are varieties of games, there are also varieties in um, linguistic uses. Any game, for that matter, is guided by set of rules. Similarly, according to Wittgenstein, every linguistic usage is guided by certain rules. For example, traveling a ball with hands is an allowed was in basketball, but the same is treated as a foul in football. A foul is nothing but transpassing of a rule which is established by way of convention. What is more important in this game analogy is that a participant's view of the game is towards whether it is verifiable or falsifiable. Rather, the meaningfulness of the religious utensils and belief lies in the way it is being used. The crux of the argument is that language does not work on the basis of its meaning, whatever it makes sense or not. Rather, it works on the basis of how it is used in our life. What is the significance of language again for our understanding of religious language? Wittgenstein maintains that the language employed in religious utensils need not be seen corroborates whether it corroborates with the facts or not. Let us take the examples with which we started. How does God have thousand heads and thousand eyes and thousand feet? Similarly, what type of description it is? When we talk of God's eyes and ears, what does it mean to say that those who believe in God will live forever? Does it make sense? If so, how we should make sense of it? For this type of religious statements, the sense do not depend upon if they are corroborating, corroborating. The sense do not depend upon if they are corroborating with the facts. This is testing if a religious believer will ever die or not. A testing of God really has ears and eyes or not. These religious statements make sense by the way it regulates the person's believer life. Artie Braithwaite 1900 to 1990 believed that religious statements are moral in content and can therefore be verified as they can result in change of behavior. Will Wittgenstein will, will, will Will Wittgenstein gave the room for understanding religious intentions from a different standpoint, away from the logical positivism or traditions, by making the meaningfulness of the language on the basis of its use. Braithwaite extended this argument further by maintaining that the use of religious language lies in its moral content. In the similar vein of Wittgenstein, Braithwaite argued that religious abstractions are based Abstractions are based upon a commitment to live life in a particular way. Like Wittgenstein, he said that religious believers need to have to think whether the historical accounts of religious utensils are verifiable or not. For example, a Hindu need not really have to verify when Krishna was born and where he was born. Similarly, for Christianity as well, what really matters for him is that how Krishna wants us to live and what qualities and attitudes we have to inculcate we have to inculcate in order to lead a religious form of life. Similarly, for fluid falsification principles as well, there are a good number of responses from the theological and philosophical community. One of the answers to the problem of fluid falsification problem was given by R.M. Hare 1919 to 2002, an English moral philosopher. Hare suggested that instead of looking at religious statements to be capable of falsified or not, we have we have to see them as the point or reference from where the explanations, verifiability, falsifiability make sense. That means he is suggesting that religious language are in a sense beyond scientific cognition. He here calls the religious statements as the outcome of our experience, which he calls as bliss. A bliss, according to him, is an unverifiable and unfalsifiable interpretation of one's experience process. It is by our beliefs that we decide what is and what is not an explanation. According to here, religious people have a religious belief, have a religious belief. The religious people make their intentions from these religious beliefs. Standpoint here explains his position through the parable of paranoid. So to get in the idea of falsifiability and verifiability of religious intentions do not make sense because those criteria are offered from a different belief altogether. Maybe a scientific belief in a sense. Higher is agreeing to fuse falsifiability positions, but he may not agree to fuse positions of setting aside religious statements as meaningless and nonsense. What he agrees with is that it may be meaningless and nonsense from the scientific beliefs, but it may not be from the religious belief. BG Mitchell, Mitchell, 1917, was trying to respond to few positions from a slightly different angle. He comes up with the parable of stranger and tries to show that religious intentions do have cognitive meaning, but the truthfulness or falsity will we know only at the end. John Keith, 1992, also tries to make a similar position when he says that all the matters of faith will be verified at the end of time. His theory thus suggests that religious statements are verifiable but not in the present situations. But at the end of time, those beliefs can be verified. His theory is called as es- eschatological verification. John Hick, in his work Faith and Knowledge, used the allegory of quest for a celestial city. In this, the narrates that a theist and atheist are walking on the same road. Will the theists believe that there is a destination or a celestial city? The atheists believe that there is no final destinations and if is an endless road. The point is if there really is a destination, then the theists believe is proved right. But if there is no destinations on the endless road, the the theist position can't be justified as the road is endless. It can never be verified. Thus, one can see a growth of literature in the philosophical reflection of religious language as possible answers and solutions keep supporting from every many sources regarding the meaningfulness nature of religious language. In the attempt of defend and support the meaningfulness of religious language against the strict scientific criteria of verifiability and falsifiability, thinkers come out with novel and fresh way of looking at the whole issue. The way Wittgenstein showed with respect to the use of religious language takes us beyond the narrow confinements of issues related merely to the cognitivity of religious intentions. It in fact leads to further discussions about the beyond the cognitivity of religious ascension Sessions that include understanding the multiple uses of religious utensils, the discourse, pertaining pertaining to religious language thus gets enriched by these different contributors, and one can take the finer aspect of philosophical speculations and sophisticated arguments in their works that shall generate a great amount of interest for any students of philosophy. 2.7. Let us sum up. In this chapter, we tried to understand the nature of religious language. Religious language posed a problem for the thinkers as understanding the meaning of the religious language was taken to be a serious issue of discussion. Well, in the medieval period, the issue of understanding the religious language was confined from to the con- confined to the discussions of univocal, equivocal, and analogical ways. In the modern period, the discussion was with respect to the meaningfulness and cognitive nature of religious language. The project of logical positivists and the challenges of verifications and falsifications principles made the meaningfulness of religious language in jeopardy. However, thinkers like Wittgenstein, Thier, Hierarchy, and all tried to resist sorry, this challenge by offering different possible solutions to the problem by having a diverse perspective with respect to meaningfulness of religious language. The discourse returning to religious language expanded its domain and still continues to generate a very high and interesting amount of literature in this domain of study. Keywords: वाच्यता वाच्य Vachartha or Abhidha, primary meaning or literal meaning. For example, the word pot referring to the actual entity pot. Laksharth, secondary meaning or metaphorical meaning. Nonsensical, those sentences which can't be verified. Bleak, unvariable and unfalsifiable interpretation of one life.